So it wasn't bad enough that we had to stay up until 11:30 or however late you stayed up last night watching Pitt basketball. It wasn't bad enough that it was a late game. It was a 9 p.m. tip-off on the ACC network, and you had to stay up and watch that game past 11 o'clock. They could have at least made it interesting. They could have at least made it competitive. They could have at least looked like a competent basketball team. But the Pitt basketball team, as they've done so often in the last 10 games, didn't look like a competent, competitive basketball team. I actually shouldn't say like they've done so often, because it's remarkable that, given how the last few games have gone and what we saw, the Virginia game, obviously, last night's game at SMU, were really the only blowouts in this stretch, dating back to the Duke game. There was the Duke game, and then these two. A lot of these games have been close, but that's of little solace and little consolation. And it seems hard to remember when Pitt played a game that was close, even though it just happened 4 days ago on Saturday. It's hard to remember that when they just got dog walked off the court at SMU. What is it about playing at SMU for Pitt sports teams? Just doesn't go well. Football team got embarrassed there in the fall. Basketball team now gets embarrassed last night. A 20-point loss, 83-63. It was never that close. It was another 20-point deficit in the first half, just like it's been. Now I think, in Pitt's, how many ACC games have they played? 13 ACC games? 12 ACC games? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I was going to be like, well, in Pitt's 12 or 13 ACC games, they've been down by double digits in the first half. And actually, it doesn't matter. This is what they do. They dig themselves a hole. This is what they do. They fall behind by a lot. In this game last night, like the Virginia game, they fell down by 20 in the first half. Never even got close again after that. Some of these games, they've fallen behind by double digits in the first half, and they've been able to, make it competitive. Last night, what passed for making it competitive was cutting the lead to 13. And, my apologies, sir, but you'll forgive me if I'm not impressed by the fact that you cut the lead to 13. You dig yourself such a drastic hole. And look, we've seen this team play some terrible first halves over the course of the ACC schedule here. Terrible, in the last 10 games. Last night might have been the worst. Again, like the stats don't matter. The numbers don't matter. I don't even want to bother going through this, but they shot 9 of 34 in the first half last night. 26.5%, 5 of 20 from 3. And as someone who has advocated for this team to shoot more threes, 20 in the first half was probably a bit of a reaction. But you know what? They were so bad inside the arc. They were 4 of 14 inside the arc. You might as well fire away from deep. You're not that much worse, and at least when you make them, they're worth 3 points. But of course, they made 9 field goals in the first half and turned the ball over 8 times. And for SMU turned that into 12 or 14 points off of turnovers, whereas Pitt had as many points off of turnovers in the first half last night as I did. And you did. What a miserable performance. What a terrible performance in the first half. And it's not to take anything away from SMU. I think, if you listened to the Morning Pitt yesterday, or you've looked at SMU at all, you have any sense of who they are or what they've been this season, it was largely like that game. They shoot threes really well. They're the best three-point shooting team in the ACC, and they went 10 of 20. From beyond the arc last night. They distribute the ball and, get a lot of guys scoring. I think they had, going into the game last night, they had 5 guys scoring in double digits and 1 more scoring 9.9 points per game. Last night, they had 4 guys reach double digits. They also had 18 assists on their 29 made baskets. They out-rebounded Pitt, which you would expect with the size that they have down low with the big freshman, the 7'2" guy who ended up with 17 and 10. He was dominant and unstoppable, but it was almost like his scoring in the paint was just like the cherry on top, because they were so dominant from outside. They were so deadly on the threes that, obviously it helped that SMU had 38 points in the paint, and they had 16 fast break points, and they scored 18 points off of turnovers and all this. That's big, but they scored at will and were able to shoot threes at will, that it just didn't everything they wanted to do, they were able to do really well. And there was a brief spot in the, a brief stretch in the second half of the second half where Pitt sort of made it competitive. Again, we're talking about cutting the lead to 13 is making it competitive. It's not good enough. I mean, like, just another game where, and I'm watching that game last night, and I knew I had to record this Morning Pitt after the game was over, and I'm like, what the hell am I gonna say? Like, what is there to say at this point? What new things do I have to say about this team at this point? Ishmael Leggett went 5 of 17 last night. Jalen Lowe was a little better at 3 of 9. Zach Austin 2 of 10 from the floor, 2 of 8 from 3, and outside of, I think he was 3 of 6 at North Carolina on Saturday. But other than that, this is like 3 out of the last 4 games. He has been god awful from 3. As good as he's been all season, he has been really bad the last, like I say, 3 out of the last 4 games. He has been shooting really poorly. 2 of 8 from beyond the arc last night. Scored 8 points, and grabbed 6 rebounds. I mean, they got Guillermo involved. 5 of 9 from the floor, 3 of 6 from 3. Brandon Cummings got the minutes that he should be getting. With Damian Dunn out, played 16 minutes. Although those minutes, like, he didn't come in until the 12-minute mark of the first half. In the second half, he came in a little bit earlier, but that's because Jalen Lowe got hurt, and he ended up playing all the way through to the end of the second half. Who knows how many minutes Brandon Cummings gets if Jalen Lowe doesn't get hurt? And Cummings wasn't the most efficient. He was 3 of 8 from the floor, but he made 2 3-pointers. He was 4 of 4 from the free throw line. He had 2 steals. Committed a few fouls, but he also had 3 assists, 1 rebound. I mean, like, it doesn't, like, in the context of talking about this game last night, we don't need to sit here and say, why wasn't Brandon Cummings playing more? But I gave you the stats yesterday when we talked about what they were going to do without Damian Dunn, about how Cummings was averaging, 10.9 points per game in the games when Damian Dunn didn't play. Well, add in last night where he scores 12 points, and you've now got Brandon Cummings in 8 games where Damian Dunn is out with an injury. The 7 games that he missed earlier in the season, plus last night, Brandon Cummings has averaged 18 minutes per game, and he scored 11 points per game. And, like, that's 8 games total. He's got 5 double-digit scoring games in there. He had his 30-point game against Eastern Kentucky. He's got a 15-point game against Cal. He scored 12 against Mississippi State. He scored 12 last night. He scored 10 against Sam Houston. So he's a good player. He could score. He could shoot. He can handle himself. He had 1 turnover in 16 minutes last night. Seems good. Lowe and Leggett had 8 combined in 64 minutes of play. So they played a lot more, but you could use Brandon Cummings. Amsel Delilich gets on the court. He gets 1 shot from 3. Amsel Delilich played 9 minutes last night, and he gets 1 shot from beyond the arc. He gets 2 total shot attempts. He had more rebounds than points. Well, no, he scored 2 points on free throws, and he had 2 offensive rebounds. But you only get him 1 shot from 3? This is maybe the best 3-point shooter on the team. And if he's not the best, he's one of the top. I mean, he's up there. He might be the best pure shooter on the team. And yeah, he missed the shot he took last night, but dang, get him the ball a little bit more. Give him some more opportunities to shoot. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing. And I don't think anybody does. I don't get it. And like I said, worst of all, I don't know, what is there new to say? What did last night's game show us that we haven't seen for the last 10 games? Really? Other than, Brandon Cummings looking like he can be a useful player this season and Guillermo making shots. What did last night's game show us? They're weak in the post. Knew that. They're inefficient, with their lead guards. Knew that. They don't defend the 3 very well. Knew that. They don't rebound very well. Knew that. I don't think last night showed anything new that we didn't see in the Carolina game on Saturday, that we didn't see in the Virginia game last week, or the Louisville game, or the Clemson game, or the Florida State game, or the Duke game. We've seen all these things. We know all these things. We know who they are. And it's unfortunate that we have found out who they are. And it's a terrible disappointment that they are a whole lot more like the 2019-20 team and the 2020-21 team and the 2021-22 team and the 2018-19 team. Like, they are a lot more like those teams than they are like the team from 2 years ago or even last year's team. Nah, look, they'll go out there and turn it around and have a big run over the final whatever games left of the season, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, I'm done counting on that. I'm done expecting that. I'm done looking at, okay, this team, I believe in their talent. They're good enough. They'll get it turned around. If they were good enough to turn it around, they wouldn't have lost by 20 tonight. No, I'm not necessarily saying they would have won. It's tough to win on the road. It's obviously a matchup problem going against the bigs. That big 7'2" freshman, that's a tough matchup. So I'm not going to sit here and say, well, if they were really going to turn it around here, they would have won. But they wouldn't have gotten blown out like this. And if they were really capable of turning this thing around, they wouldn't have lost some of these games that they've lost. They wouldn't have lost the Carolina game. They wouldn't have lost the Clemson game. But they did. And they got blown out tonight. And that's why, like, I'm at a loss, because it's the same thing over and over again. It's the same thing. It's the same issues. It's those, weak side, like, you double and there's no weak side help. Theo Pinson added very little to the broadcast last night, but he pointed out a few of Pitt's defensive deficiencies, and he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong about, what SMU wants to do. I'm not a basketball coach, but it was pretty apparent to me early on what SMU was doing and how they were doing it. And every time Pitt doubled, it was easy pickings. I would bet SMU averaged like 1.8 points per possession when Pitt doubled, or maybe 1.9. It was just, or maybe even more, because they got threes out of those situations too. Just like another game, just like the Carolina game in the first half, quite honest, where you just said they're just running circles around you on the court and off the court. They're running circles around you. And what do you got? You got no answer. I don't know. I don't know what there is to, I know that we're like 13 minutes into this episode and I haven't played the intro music yet. I feel like I should do that just to reset so I can like talk about something else from the game. But again, like what details of last night's game do you get into? What do you look at from last night's game and say, well, that's an interesting topic we haven't really explored yet. We haven't talked about. We've talked about the rebounding. We've talked about the defense. We've talked about the inefficient guards. We've talked about the lack of 3-point defense. We've covered all these things. We've talked about the first half deficits. We've talked about all the reasons that Pitt is sitting here at 14-10 and 5-8 in the ACC. We've talked about these things over and over and over again. And I'm sure Jeff Capel has talked to his guys about these things over and over and over again. Because he's watching it and it probably bothers him even more than it bothers, all of us on the outside. What else is there to say at this point? Sure, mathematically, could they go on a run? I'd love to see, where was NC State at this point last year? I guess you could, that's what you can hang on to your hopes. That's what you can hang your hopes on, is maybe they can go on a magical run. That's what you've got right now. That's what it feels like. Coming up, what do they have? They have Miami on Saturday. They get Syracuse a few days after that. What day is that? 15, 16, 17, next Tuesday. Oh yeah, a week from today. Should have known, or a week from last night. And then Notre Dame, at Notre Dame and Georgia Tech at home. I mean, these are all games they can win. Games they'll probably be favored to win. Games they probably should win. But I just wonder if the cuts are so deep now that even if they go out and look good against Miami on Saturday and they're able to come out with a win, is it really going to matter all that much? Is it going to make you feel any better about things? This is not going to change any of the outcomes that have happened over the last 10 games. They've lost 8 out of 10. 2 4-game losing streaks. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of at a loss on this one. I'm at a loss, and I know a lot of the Pitt fans on the message boards probably have a lot to say. I know they always do, and we'll go check that out and read all the comments and questions. And I think we'll have a good conversation about that throughout the day today and the rest of the week leading into Saturday's game. But dang, and like, I don't think, you weren't going to take a moral victory out of last night's game if they only lost by one, if it went down kind of like the Carolina game did on Saturday. You weren't going to take any moral victories out of that. You weren't going to feel good about a loss. But to just look like you're not even in the same league, that you don't even belong on the same court, that SMU toyed with you. Kind of like the football team did. I mean, to be quite honest, it's kind of like the football team did. They got pushed around, they got owned, and they had no response whatsoever. Brief little moments of, flourishes of inspiration in the second half. With Brandon Cummings, I think, playing a big part in that. And he should have a big part going forward. But there was nothing in that game last night. And I don't care that they flew straight from Chapel Hill. I don't care that they haven't been home in 5 days. If that was going to be such a problem, you should have flown home. I don't think that's what the problem was. And you know what? And like, that got brought up on the broadcast a few times last night, that they didn't, that Pitt went right from Chapel Hill on Saturday to Dallas on Sunday and practiced at the Mavericks arena on Sunday and practiced at SMU's place on Monday and all that, and then their shoot around, like, that they haven't been home and they didn't travel and all that stuff. And like, that doesn't mean anything to me. That doesn't mean anything to me at all, because this game last night, again, just like the Virginia game, was sort of like all of their worst tendencies coming to a head. All the little bad things that they've done over the course of basically every game since the Stanford game, all of those little things all happened together in a big way. And that was the case last night. So it wasn't like that was an uncharacteristic performance. Unfortunately, it wasn't an uncharacteristic performance. It was very much a characteristic performance, which nobody ever talks about characteristic performances. Everybody always says that's uncharacteristic. Well, that was very characteristic. That was very typical for that team, what we saw them do last night. And that's a shame. Because like I think we talked on Monday about the disappointment of this season, that they should be better than they are. But they're not. And they're not. And maybe they'll look better on Saturday. They should look better on Saturday. But what? Miami just won last night. Miami just beat Syracuse last night. With what you've seen from Pitt over the last 10 games, are you really putting Pitt that far above Syracuse that you would say they can't lose to Miami? It's going to be a nothing crowd. Nobody's going to go to this game on Saturday. They should, because you only have 4 more home games left, and no matter how disappointed you are by the season, it's still college basketball in Pittsburgh. It's still your favorite team playing, so you still should go to the game, but I'm sure that crowd is going to be pretty sad. I don't know. And then who knows what's going to happen with Jalen Lowe as well. Lowe got hurt in the game last night, came back in. He went out after he looked like he got headbutted by Boopy Miller. Went out, came back in for 2 minutes, left the game again, and didn't return the rest of the way. So I would assume he'll be available on Saturday, but that's just an assumption, given that he stayed on the bench and all of that. I guess maybe once he gets back to Pittsburgh, he can get evaluated by the team doctor like Damian Dunn is going to. But if they end up on Saturday without Lowe, now you're down 2 of your veteran guards. You're down Lowe and Dunn, probably. Although, like I say, I would like to see Brandon Cummings play more. I would like to see Amsal Delilich play more and get some shots. Like, what you're doing and what you've done isn't working and hasn't worked. So, Brandon Cummings, 11 points per game when Damian Dunn's not in there, plays a decent amount of minutes, tends to produce. You might as well roll with him. Delilich, I bet if you let him shoot like 5 or 6 times in a game, he's going to make a bunch of baskets and give you a bunch of points. Can't believe we made it like 20 minutes into this episode. I still never played the intro music. I guess this will be an intro musicless Morning Pitt. We'll just fade to white to end this thing and try to move on. I don't know. It was a real shame. I mean, like, and this was like the whole like theme of Monday's podcast of, oh, it's such a shame and, you know, it's a disappointment and they should be better than they are. But like, I mean, you're still going out there and getting blown out by 20. I guess it's not worse than the Virginia loss, right? This is a quad 1 game. So there's that. Can we get a thumbs up? There it is. All right. Don't forget, we got the live show tonight. We certainly have plenty to talk about, and we will be talking about it with Pitt basketball. That's right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com at 8:30 p.m. Tune in to join the conversation with me and Jim Hammett. You can post your comments and questions, so it's like a big roundtable conversation with you and me and Jim. And so those are always fun to do. Make sure you like this video and subscribe as well. That way you won't miss any of our Pitt video content here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And then check out the website where Pitt fans are certainly sounding off today. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. All right. That didn't go well last night, but that doesn't mean you can't have a great Wednesday. So hope you enjoy your day. Tune in tonight for the live show at 8:30, and we will catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.